Well, good morning, Detroit. I like the enthusiasm. Thank you for joining us for this important discussion on talent management approaches for AI business solutions. My name is John Sartor, and as the Director of Infrastructure and Information Security for a large manufacturing company, I've seen firsthand how rapidly AI is reshaping our industry and the demands it places on our workforce. Today, we're here to explore not just the technical side of AI, but the human side, the strategies, challenges, and opportunities in building and nurturing the talent that will drive AI-powered business transformation. We're fortunate to have with us today Sabrina Hebeler, Chief Performance Officer for Overpower, a successful startup company in the AI innovation space. Together, we'll dive into questions about talent acquisition, upskilling, organizational change, and the real impact of AI on jobs and business models. Our goal is to move beyond the headlines and the hype, have a candid, practical conversation about what's working, what's not, and what's next for leaders like you. We'll spend about 50 minutes in discussion and then transition into an open floor Q&A. Let's get started.
Do you mind, John, real quick? I think a lot of people might wonder what a chief performance officer is, so I'm going to clarify that because I get a lot of questions. So just for a little bit of context here, y'all, what I do for Overpower and some of our brand solutions like Prompt Privacy is I'm responsible for the talent management and performance management of the organization, the solutions, the teams, and the individuals to ensure they're operating at their highest value. So I just want to give that context as we enter this conversation because I think that can provide a little perspective on how we might do this. Also, I don't know what John's going to ask me today, so we set this up on purpose so that this is purely candid. So bear with me.
Ready, Freddie?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Sabrina, as someone co-leading an AI startup with patented IP, how do you define the intersection of talent and AI in today's business landscape?
So that's a really great question. I think there's a few different ways we define that intersection. One of the first things that we think about with any business problem that we solve, first of all, I have a firm stance that there is no AI use case, there are only business use cases. And the first market pillar that we actually look at in understanding if a problem is valuable to solve with artificial intelligence is there a talent gap in the market today where we don't see a future where the skills, the education, the pipeline of workforce is coming? And there's quite a few of those today. And so the first intersection is in the market conditions. And that helps us to understand if we should even apply artificial intelligence or not to that problem. Because if we measure the value of that talent, if we measure the labor needed, that's a direct bottom line impact. And so we look at that as an assessment of, is it valuable to solve this problem? I think the other intersection that we see is there's a lot of hype, right? I'm really tired of hearing the news articles of like, so many jobs are going to disappear because of AI. That is an intersection we have to look at, but I think we have to be really realistic about the probability and the realities that come with that, because there's do we have the skills to adopt AI? Do we have the skills and the talent to operate artificial intelligence? But also, what's the impact on our organization if it is successful? And I'd challenge everyone, are you actually prepared to deal with that?
So as a follow-up, and you started to touch on this a little bit, do you see talent as a limiting factor or an enabling force in AI adoption?
Sure, I think it can be both. I think it's limiting in the sense that many companies, and we work with organizations up to the size of 30,000 employees, with teams that are dedicated to the building of artificial intelligence. I think we have to be really realistic with that, though, that those skill sets are going for $1 million a pop to large organizations, and to think that we can find those and easily access the skill sets needed to be truly successful is very difficult. On the other side of the coin, our business leaders actually can be some of the greatest forces in enabling the adoption of artificial intelligence. And so we're seeing this shift whereas individuals who have worked in technology are now having to walk alongside the business And business can help enable the use of technology to drive the company forward, whereas before I think technologists were trying to help business drive the company forward. And I think we're seeing a shift there. So we have to really be able to lean into our business leadership. We have to be able to help them identify their problems and their opportunities. They have to be able to tell us the value of that. And as technologists, we need to be able to determine, are we gonna try and build this ourselves? Are we gonna try and buy a fragmented tool set? Or are we gonna buddy up with someone who's gonna help us fill those gaps that we need to take it forward?
Specific to you folks, how do you see AI changing the nature of work in your specific industry?
In the actual building of products and services?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a misnomer out there that you should be a prompt engineer or an AI solution engineer. The reality is everyone we work with is a mathematician. And I'll be clear, guys, I came from business before this and strategy, and I had the same thing. I was like, all these people are AI people. They're not. They're mathematicians. And so I get the question a lot in relation to this. What should my son or daughter go to school for? Please be a plumber. We really need those. But second, if you are serious about being impactful in this world, mathematics and advanced mathematics is every single engineer that we hire. And so that's really been the shift from our perspective is we're getting away from can you use tools to make something work, and can you actually write native code and program and think about very complex problems in a new and different way. And that takes math and data science.
Sticking with talent, the talent landscape for AI. Do we currently have the talent needed to drive AI business solutions? If not, where are we going to get it from?
It's a really great question. I think it depends on the organization. I think it's important that we define what a business solution is first. And there's two forms of artificial intelligence that we drive forward in organizations. And one is, not to use and overuse a Gartner word, but everyday AI, right? Can we provide basic access that's secure, has enterprise controls, and can we make sure that our everyday users can increase their productivity between 5 and 10%, right? And then there's what we're talking about, where business solutions come in and actually really transform an organization. I'll give you a couple of examples. We have deep experience in what we consider to be hyper-enablement, where we can create headless automated solutions that go from data acquisition all the way to some type of activation, such as generating sales negotiation packages for account managers to take out that's hyper-personalized and focused on a customer. When we talk about that kind of business solution, we do have the talent to adopt those and move those forward. It's a change in mindset of our cultures to say, no longer am I the person going and finding all of the information this morning and searching all of my drives and systems, but rather it's delivered right to me to then use at the highest value of a human touch. I think what we see is that organizations are worried about, do we have the talent to manage the data? I'll be clear, that's like a 10, 15-year journey if you're trying to do it yourself. It's really about, can we solve that problem so we can leverage the talent we have and move it forward that way? Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. So more specifically on talent and developing talent, what role do partnerships with universities or startups play in closing this gap? Because the gap is pretty significant right now.
Yeah, it is pretty significant. And I'm sure you all feel it in here, that you want to do something, but you're not really sure if you have the people or the resources to actually make it successful. And I think there's a lot of research out there that states that there's a cliff, right? And the cliff's real. We think about it every single day. What's interesting about education and startups is the individuals looking to make the most impact through math and data science are attracted to leading edge activities. And I know this is like a marketing term, but the bleeding edge, if you will. And so they're gonna go there because they can do research and they can try new things and they can experiment in a safe space and In a startup culture or an educational culture, they're encouraged to do that. When we have to operate a business every day, it's like you're walking a fine line. Like, you can try something new, but within what parameters and with what budget? And who's going to pay for the mistakes or the failures? And who wants to go back to the board a year from now and say, hey, we invested $2 million into this and didn't work? How many epochs of technology are we going to try that on for and not learn from it? So I think they play a significant role because it allows you to experiment a little more safely, probably with lower budgets, actually, because you're not trying to bring in full-time employees to do these things. And then you can walk away with some lessons learned and actually apply those. So I highly encourage with educational institutions or startups, if you can, or business centers of excellence that are the private partnership between education and startups to do so.
Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit about this, but what specific skill sets are in the most demand for AI initiatives in business today?
Everyone's going to be like, prompt engineering. No. Raise your hand if you know someone that can write a really good business value analysis. Okay, so there's a few, right? That is the highest demand skill right now, because it's really difficult to say that you know the return on investment of solving a problem. And that skill to understand the problem, to map out the chain of thought that it takes to actually do it today, to then say it's this much time, it's this much tooling, it's this much assistance and resources wrapped around that, and to be able to stand there and say it's worth this much, and to do it, it's going to cost this much, that skill, to me, is the key to moving artificial intelligence forward.
Yeah,
and I think you've experienced that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that, what we're finding ourselves doing is, well, for lack of a better word, we're swagging it. And then you're not going to know for a year till you come back and look at it to figure out were your numbers even remotely close. And I can tell you that so far it's not working out so well. We're spending more than we thought we were going to spend.
It's such a...
Are we getting the desired results? And it's interesting with AI, the projects that we're working on, the dirt roads that you wind up going down, because it's like, wow, I've got something with this data over here, and that's not what we intended for it to do, but now we know something we didn't know before. And so it's very interesting. It's
such a skill in high demand that we actually built out an entire team of just business analysts that all they do all day, every day, is analyze the value of a problem and determine, is it worth investing in or not? And that is the core of how we decide whether or not we're going to apply our own technology. There are times where people come to us with problems, we do the analysis, and we're like, that's not worth it. It's not going to be worth it for you, it's not going to be worth it for us, don't go down that path. And that skill is something we heavily rely on.
So leaning back towards the talent landscape, how do you assess whether your organization's talent pool is AI ready? What's the litmus test?
I should have seen that question coming from you. You have to move in phases, and this was an experience for us. I think as technologists, and I hope all of you can relate, you look at an organization, you're like, of course you would get it. Of course you can open up that application and just use it today. And I have to reflect on experiences in my career where there was a time where I helped roll out EMRs, and I'm going to tell a brief story if you don't mind. I had this experience as a young person where I had to help a physician use an EMR for the first time. And I go into the room with him, I'm walking him through, and I say, just take your mouse and go ahead and click over there. And he picks up the mouse, and he puts it on the screen. And I could not make this up. And at the time, I'm 23, and I'm just like, that is not at all what I expected to happen here. We have to back way up. The same applies. There are different pockets of your organization that are going to be ready. Anyone who has worked in technology is of a particular generation, and it's really important to find those individuals first and to provide them the access and the tools, because they're going to carry that message forward, and they're going to be able to help others adopt. Our mistake was, in our early days, was to assume that we could apply the same thinking across the entire organization and that it was just standard training. It's not. We firmly believe in accelerators of identifying your potential power users and business users that have the problems in their mind and that have the skill sets to easily, intuitively adopt things, and then leveraging them to carry that forward and help their teams adopt it from there. So how do you know? You go to the same lessons we've learned from previous adoption. It's not different. I wish it were.
Excellent. Let's flip it around a little bit to dealing with the workforce directly. What does AI mean for the workforce? There's a lot of fear and speculation around AI replacing jobs. What's your take on how AI is reshaping the workforce?
So is your question, will it happen? Will the robots take over?
It's a follow-up question.
Yeah, there is a lot of fear. And I always encourage everyone to remember that the media is an art form that allows us to push and pull and think about private equity and capital. So always be conscientious of what you read. The reality is there are cases where we've put in solutions that have replaced a portion of employees. But when I say that, I don't mean that it's completely replaced their job. What it's done is it's replaced activities that weren't really bringing a ton of value to the organization. So I can tell you that when I talk with CEOs, no CEO's like, man, I'm so glad that those people spend 60% of their time looking for data. No CEO's thankful for that. He is thankful when we've automated that and that person can then spend 60% more of their time negotiating contracts or making financial decisions that make sense or negotiating new contracts with suppliers and vendors. Anything that has that human component that you really cannot replace. Can you enable it? Sure. The reality is it's not jobs that are going to be lost. It's full processes and activities. And quite honestly, after analyzing 500 to 600 business cases over the last year, the highest value application in business is to manage the data with artificial intelligence. Find it, administer it, prepare it for analysis. Because we've done 100 time studies. We've done the research. 60 to 80% of teams' times when they're preparing for decisions is spent just trying to get the data right. What if we could have that back? It would make a huge difference. So yes, there's some impact. Is it what we think it's going to be, where everyone's interacting with an autonomous agent? Not necessarily. Think of the agents as they should be in the background with the humans forward. That's our stance.
And just to follow up on that, what we're finding is, in a lot of cases, if it's that simple to displace those individuals, then probably what it is it was process improvement that displaced those individuals, not the AI that replaced the individuals. So just a little side note there. Are there new entry points for early career professionals in an AI-driven organization?
Ooh, that's a good question. Entry points in terms of their own career.
Yep.
So new entry points, I would actually encourage individuals to, and this might ruffle some feathers, so I'm going to say this very cautiously. I'm going to say what you should stay away from and what you should go towards. How's that sound? So if you have a child in college and they're going into their first career, I would encourage them to stay away from cybersecurity. Okay, that's a heavily data-oriented field, and a lot of that is becoming very automated. I would encourage them to go into things that require a lot of human connection. Business process improvement can be a great intersection of technology and that human orientation today. I would say anything that really is over the business side. As we get into the back end and the data operations, while being a data scientist can be very, very helpful today in an organization, things further down that chain of command may not be the best entry point.
Are there any particular training programs or partnerships you found effective?
Training programs, there's lots of great certificates out there. If you can become more and more knowledgeable just through the hands-on courses, I mean, we have plenty of individuals who go through Google courses and things of that nature with artificial intelligence. Those are very beneficial. Ultimately, we take the approach of if you can get a free tool and you can try it on and you can learn from it, that practical experience actually moves you farther ahead in being able to be an effective teammate. So our engineers, while they obviously write their own code and things of that nature, they try on every single tool and they understand how it works. And that understanding of chain of thought of why something works the way it works is exactly the skill set needed to be successful in artificial intelligence. It's not about, yeah, like you need Python and things of that nature ultimately to be a great contributor to the build of something. But to operate it, just being able to understand a problem and translate that into its steps is the key skill.
We've talked a little bit about the roles for AI, but do you anticipate any, I would say new roles emerging as AI adoption grows? Are there different roles within the institution that are going to up to the surface?
Yeah, I think so. I think first we're seeing a wave of roles that are around the intersection of business and technology. We've all seen this leader of transformational AI or leader of innovation really come to the forefront. I think that'll stick around for some time because we really need an executive champion who can bring together the two sides of the house and really lead that forward. It's tough to do by committee. You really need teams around that. I would say that the data science and the data field is going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And part of that is because the more we recognize the value of the data and the use of it, the more we're going to need individuals to bring that connection together.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the DPO role is really blowing up now that people are starting to understand that you can't do AI unless your data's in.
Yep, compliance is going to continue to grow.
Yep. So let's flip over to culture and institutions. Culture in American institutions is traditionally based on people. What happens next? How do we preserve human-centric values in organizations increasingly driven by AI?
It's a really good question. So we talk a lot about this because, and I'm probably going to skip into something you're going to ask me about, but I'm going to go there anyway. Traditionally, what we have in organizations is a management culture. And a management culture is purely based on the need to control, and I say that objectively, the need to control people and processes, right? And that management culture leads us to a specific set of activities around how we engage people, how we talk with them. We spend most of our time in one-on-one meetings or helping people understand something. And what we find is that as we transition to using artificial intelligence, if we're truly going to adopt it and work alongside it, so to speak, and that's going to be in the form of agentic, we have to be able to transition into a measurement culture. And you'll say, but Sabrina, we have a scorecard. That's not what I'm necessarily talking about. Scorecards are important, but we have to be able to measure the effectiveness comparatively of a person to an agent. That requires a shift in our cultures. Many of us measure the effectiveness of someone based on when they show up in my office and we sit down and I say, hey, John, how's it going today? And he's going to tell me about all the things he's done, and we're going to talk through that, and when we might say, what are some barriers or challenges you have? And he's going to tell me that. We're not going to have that same experience with technology. It either does the work or it doesn't do the work. And that proof of work becomes the measure of success. And what's difficult is in companies today, we've struggled to adopt that mentality because to some extent, it feels a little cold, right? You either did the work or you didn't do the work. And you either get paid for the work or you don't get paid for the work. Agents do the work or they don't do the work. And if they don't do the work, we rebuild them. Now, we're not going to do that with humans. That would be terrible. But we have to start merging that together. Otherwise, we're going to be in a situation that actually drives more people out than keep them. And if we can help people get over that bridge to the measurement culture and truly help them see that deliverables and meeting deliverables are the highest of importance, and the rest is still important, but maybe second to that, we will see less people leaving organizations or being pushed out due to this. We will be able to actually work alongside with that.
completely stole my thunder for the next question.
You're welcome.
So we'll pull you back into the culture. Because I do have a few more questions I think that are relevant to that.
Ask away.
How do we ensure that AI augments rather than replaces human potential?
Yeah. So augmentation is a very technical term in our world. So I'm going to define that first real quick. So assistive is when we're leveraging artificial intelligence to essentially just help with basic tasks. So task automation, right? Augmentation is when we get to activity automation. So augmentation generally not only provides productivity increases, but it also upskills an employee in the process. Okay, so generally we're doing that by leveraging either our own data to a certain extent, at the same time a large language model or some form of artificial intelligence to complete or assist and augment a process. Okay, so I'll give you an example. When I'm automating or when I'm doing assistive, help me write this email. Right, write this email. When I'm augmenting, it's things like go out and compare these tariff codes and do the cost calculation for me and bring that back to me in a way that I can then go and work with the vendor or supplier directly. Okay. So how we help people be augmented is we put the artificial intelligence in the places that a human brain cannot do at scale or at the complexity.
Yep.
And so we work with a large auto manufacturer in America on the HTS code and compliance and tariff calculation because no matter, even though this is a key part of their business, they only have 5 people that do this every day. And so to do that repetitively is while valuable in some cases, it's also very risky. And so to truly augment, we have to identify the points of the problem in the process where the technology fits. And we can't focus on where the human sits. We have to focus on how does the human get to the highest purpose of their time spent, and that's them being able to work with the vendor or supplier in that instance. It's not, can they go out and look at the federal website 15 times a day and find that HTS code?
Sticking on the same train of thought, ethics. How do you address the ethical considerations and employee trust in this transition? I mean, it kind of goes back to this same old change management problem that we have for anything. But I think this one, touches more of the heartstrings, and especially with the current workforce, that age group. What is it? It's the 20s to early 30s are being polled as really, really nervous as to what's going to happen to them next, because they're unsure of whether they're going to have a job or not.
Sure.
So how do we do that?
So I hear 2 questions. One is around how do we address the ethical concerns around AI, but then also how do we address fear?
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with the ethical question, and there's a technical answer and there's a people answer. And I have the great pleasure of being responsible for both. The technical answer is that we have to be working with technology that has taken that into consideration. And I can't tell you that everything out there that you use has. One of the things that we've had to consider over the last 10 years of building some of the technology we have is how do you work with an agent that would represent your organization in the same way you'd expect an employee to? That's a really complex problem. It requires investments in things like memory centers, where agents can actually be grounded in a value system that is reflective of the organization that you're working for, of the society that you're working for. And that's a really impactful and a really important thing as we move forward, that when an employee then works with that agent, and we have a company out of Japan that we work with, that it truly reflects the Japanese culture and the way that they would treat each other. And building technology and knowing that we're purchasing technology that has that investment is something that is really important to consider. It's something that I didn't know. I'm not a technologist by trade, but it does make a difference in the trust and the effectiveness thereof of any type of artificial intelligence. The people answer is unfortunately tougher, right? We can program anything. People, however, have agency and free will. And believe it or not, AI still doesn't have that yet. So we have to be able to provide safe environments for them to experience it. And you've participated in some of these types of events, but a lot of organizations, including ours, host what we call immersions, where you can take those individuals and place them in a setting for a few days to allow them to really try on. Because really, it's back to the same thing with like the EMR, or I remember we're rolling out mobile devices to individuals who'd never used them before. And it's scary. Like, what am I connected to? What's gonna happen? What if I push this button? Am I gonna mess everything up? We just gotta get them past that. And really, if you can spend that time or put that group together and invest that into them, they're going to be able to carry that forward. So we have to allow the, for lack of a better phrase, test and learn sometimes in order to move forward into more of a productive environment. In terms of the fear, our technical teams would tell you one thing. I'm not the technical team, so I'm gonna leave their answer at home. They would say, well, you can get left behind. We don't believe that on the business side of our house, and it's really about addressing it head on. What are you afraid of? What's gonna happen? And some basic education around what artificial intelligence is and what it's not. We often go in at a 101 level. Like, listen, guys, it's not alive. Nothing bad's gonna happen to you today. It's just math and science. And if we can just demonstrate that it's just really complex math and science, people often move pretty quickly through that.
Excellent. So here's one that is starting to surface in our organization. How can organizations ensure a healthy talent pipeline if the traditional entry-level roles are automated or primarily automated?
I think first it takes some organizational design. So I think reacting to this problem is the first mistake. And I know that a lot of individuals in here aren't responsible for this, but when we think about, do we have an actual business strategy that allows us to effectively adopt artificial intelligence? It's more than just the CIOs and the CISOs and the DPOs that are in the room. We have to be working with our talent leaders to say, listen, here are the areas that we see coming in that are going to be replaced by artificial intelligence, and we actually map it out on an org chart. And we really look at that and we say, if we're planning for that, that should change our talent strategy. And so this has to be a leadership conversation. This is not, hey, we're gonna have AI by accident and it's gonna be effective. This is, hey, we've planned for this and we've designed an organization and we've thought about it at least for the next 3 years to say, these are the 2 areas we wanna adopt it where it's gonna make the most improvement. And so we have staffed and augmented appropriately and then planned our capacity around that going forward. And that's it's not a different approach than what talent leaders would do today. It's just a shift in thinking about people versus agents. And I think we have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, I think there's going to have to be some real thought leadership on that because you don't want to run yourself out of talent on the bottom end. Mm-mm. So how do we get those folks to leapfrog what was an entry-level position? Mm-hmm. So it's even going to, I think, even from an education perspective, what the universities or what the talent classes look like, how they're gonna get over that. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens.
And real quick, back to one of your questions. One of the new roles that we do see is instead of these analyst level roles, they're supervisors, but in a different way. And one of the new roles is, can you understand as what would have been a team lead over analysts before? Can you monitor in the performance of agentic functions? Can you report out effectively on efficiencies? And can you help drive that adoption further? If you can be on the side of driving the efficiencies and the results, we're often seeing these kind of human supervisors over agentics coming through the ranks.
Any thoughts on effective approaches for upskilling existing staff in AI and data science? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes, safe access first. I'm not a proponent of like free tools for the sake of free tools. We all have to be very conscientious of enterprise security controls and risk. I really think it's about starting with a small problem first. And I always start with a thing of, hey, think about the thing that drives you most nuts today. That if you could stop doing it today, what would it be? And then being able to educate them on how simple access to something to just be assistive can help provide that. The reality is with artificial intelligence, it doesn't matter if I sat here and lectured a full course on everything. It's not going to change the adoption. It's not going to change the practical capability. We have to be able to put things in people's hands without fear of them leaking data or asking how to make chemical weapons. I hope no one's going to do that, but we have to be able to provide that practical experience, and that can come in many formats. We can do very structured approaches to that, or you can just allow and encourage your teams through, again, safe access to go out and solve problems and then come and report back. What did you learn? Did it work? Did it not work? How were you able to validate it? Were you able to validate it? And kind of assessing from there.
So let's go back to measurement versus management, because I got several questions on that. And just to rephrase it, I guess, measurement culture versus management culture, and you already talked about this, is about the concept and why it's important to address it now as AI becomes more prolific. So how do you balance data-driven decision-making with the need for human judgment in managing talent?
How do you balance human?
How do you balance data-driven decision-making with the need for human judgment?
Well, I think it comes down to, are you measuring things that matter? Because a measurement culture does need human judgment, and so does artificial intelligence. And it's really about three core things, and I think it's really easy to make this overcomplicated. But the reality is if we measure everyone, whether it's an artificial intelligence or a team, on time, cost, and quality, we're able to intersect human judgment with artificial intelligence. And the balance comes in the human being able to validate, measure, and monitor the improvements of time, cost, and quality. And when we look at building a measurement culture, those are the three things that are key to that, both in our agents that we work with and our staff that we work with. The balancing of it is you can't just let any of the sectors run loose. You can't just trust that the artificial intelligence is performing. You can't, we all have people. You can't just trust that the people are performing, right? We have to be able to intersect those two through a balanced approach to measurement. And if you can say that we're meeting our time goals and decreasing or increasing the efficiency, that we are doing it at a cost that makes sense for the organization, and that we are meeting or exceeding quality every single time, we're able to balance those things effectively.
So I think we talked a little bit about this, but can a strong measurement culture coexist with a people-centric management approach?
That's a good question. Whew, it's a tough one. So I had the opportunity to build a measurement culture from the start. So I may be a little biased on this. I think for long-standing organizations, a measurement culture can be achieved, but it will be achieved in pockets. I think that it is extremely tough and extremely challenging with the way that organizations work and the lack of control we all have to instill specific measures across the organization. It can be super difficult. We've done a lot of research on this specifically because we work across 20 countries right now, and the measurement culture is the key to our success. If we implemented a management culture, we would be in trouble. There's no way I could meet with my team in Bulgaria and then meet with my team in Guatemala and then meet with my team in Japan and accomplish anything. We have to break things down into 2-week sprints, and we have to commit to a certain amount of deliverables, and then we have to measure, did we meet those deliverables in order to stay connected. And to take that and then go back to when I've worked at a Big 10 university or healthcare institution and say, we could implement that, it would be very difficult. Now, you can have a measurement culture that is very kind, and I like to think that we have one of those, where we're able to measure effectively, but also make sure that people are satisfied with the work that they're doing and feeling challenged and feeling engaged and being paid fairly. And I think when you center it on deliverables, you're actually able to do that really effectively. Where I stand a little shy is, can you take a 250-year-old company who's been a management style forever and implement that quickly? Probably not. Probably team by team, individual by individual.
Yeah, because we've seen folks try and implement that measurement culture too rapidly, and it runs amok, and it goes really sideways pretty fast.
It does, and you have to be conscientious. People love people. I love people, right? People are great. Measurement can feel cold, and there's a way to deliver that in a warm manner, and we have to make sure that our teams are choosing to be a part of it, that we're not just forcing them to be a part of it. And so I often start with, what do you want to be measured on? What do you think matters in your process or your work? And then if we can agree to start there, then we can both be on the same page and say, well, what would be better next time? What should we measure differently? Like, ooh, maybe that didn't tell us what we need to do. Let's try something else. And if you can get people on that train, you'll be okay. But if you just say, you come in and I say, John, being measured on these 3 things, and if you don't meet it, you're fired at the end of this. We're just all in trouble. That's never gonna happen. It's never gonna happen.
Right, I think a big part of it is selling that opportunity to that team or to that particular group of individuals. Once they understand the value of it, it seems to go a lot better. Culture shifts are necessary to support AI-driven business transformation. So what culture shifts are necessary to support AI-driven business transformation?
Here's the hard news, guys. We all have to accept that we work as a part of a business that makes money. So the biggest culture shift, and I know some of you are like, I already accepted that. Yes, you may have, but not everyone on your leadership team has accepted that. Some of us still think we're here to manage people. Unfortunately, and I'm always shy of saying this in front of groups, but we have to realize that at the end of the day, it is about dollars. And I know that sucks for some of us in the room, but it really is. And so the biggest culture shift is being able to understand value. And I know intrinsically everyone is valuable. I don't want to say that. But there really is business value, and there really are things that are not business value. And when we talk about a culture shift, it's not, can people be more technically savvy? I honestly think that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is can we all agree on what are the most valuable problems to solve, and can we measure that? And if we can all come around that as a company, and people will get on board. If we focus on technical skills, you're not gonna transform anything. And so the shift starts at the top with that it is about having a business and it's about driving business forward. And the second part of that is that it's going to take an investment. You will hear everyone in our company say this. If you think you're gonna transform your organization with a free tool or a $9.99 subscription, I hate to break it to you, you're wrong. And I'm sure you've had someone come to you and be like, but I found this free tool, and it's gonna change the way we work. And I bet you let them try it, because everyone needs to kick the rock, which is really important. Let people kick the rock. Don't force it out of them. Let them go kick that and come back around, because they're gonna come back and be like, that didn't work, I'm sorry. And you're gonna be like, correct, let's talk about real solutions now. And we have to allow that to happen, and we have to know that it's gonna be an investment. And I think that conversation starts at the C-suite level, because I think people know at the bottom that it's gonna take an investment. And I think we just have to make that shift. Mm-hmm. I could get on a soapbox about that, so I'm gonna cut myself off.
This one's kind of ripped from our own headlines here. How do we measure performance when both humans and AI agents are involved? And what I mean by that is we've taken some of our processes and we've used some agentics behind them. And now the KPIs that the folks were judged on are kind of turned on their heads, because most of it's being handled by the agentics at this stage. So how do we measure performance when both humans and AI agents are involved?
That's a really interesting question, because there's a couple layers to it. So I'll reference back to when I said when they're working alongside each other, we focus on time, cost, and quality. One of the things that we do is we have ongoing value analysis of both the agent and the supervision of that agent. We have proof of work right? So where the agent has to say, I've produced this work and this is the work that I did, a human would have to show their work like we would in a math equation, right? And so we implement the same standards across both so that it can work alongside each other.
Sure.
Part of what you're describing is that now that the agent is doing that work, how do you then manage the performance of someone else? Is that what I hear you asking?
And how are you going to, I mean, I think it's shifting the KPIs, but.
It is shifting the KPIs. So we have to choose different measures now. There were days where we could get more technically in the weeds with people because of the way that they were working through a process. Now we have to pull back and we kind of have to uniformly standardize that across the board so that we can actually understand what's happening. It can't be individualized performance measures anymore. Right. And I think that's where we stray in having a management culture, because if I'm measuring you and I have my colleague Mike, I just saw him in the back, and I measure you two differently, right? It doesn't make sense. And so now we're at a point where, because of the adoption of technology, it's driving standard performance measures.
Yeah, in our example, what we've seen is all of a sudden everybody's SLA KPIs went green. It's like, how can that be across the board like that? So we have to go retool, how we're measuring how well folks are doing and how well they're responding to customers and so on. So it was just very interesting.
Yep.
Let's see. What does a healthy management cycle look like in a hybrid human AI workforce? Healthy measurement cycle look like?
Cycle? Yeah, absolutely. I was like, I don't know, John. What does it look like?
I'm not sure.
So a healthy measurement cycle, we break it down into, and this is pretty standard. You can look this up. This is research-based. We break it down into 2 weeks of deliverables, and then we measure that on every 2 weeks, every month, every quarter, and every year. And that we have a strong policy around the measurement of those items. It's based on a really simple equation. And this is where I think people get measurement wrong and complex, is we commit. So we say we're going to do a thing, we do a thing, and then we show them that we did a thing, right? And that's every employee in our organization knows that. What are you going to do? They commit to it. In 2 weeks, is it done? Show me. If it's done, that's great, right? And we can say that we've gotten so many, for example, in our project management team, so many projects are green, so many SOPs were created, et cetera. We have a numerical report that we can then produce back on a 2-week, a monthly, and a quarterly basis. On top of that, what we do is we actually do value analysis of the time saved or the time efficiencies gained, the costs associated with those, and did we have improvements in those costs, and then did we meet and exceed quality both internally and externally. And so that value calculation actually returns a really solid understanding of how healthy we are, because we have, after you baseline that, you can set some targets and continue to improve that.
Excellent. For the last question, then we're going to take some questions from the audience. I call it a reality check, AI and FTEs. Based on media reports, AI is not replacing FTEs at the rate or in the numbers promised. What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think the reports are correct. I mean, here we are in the first mover segment of artificial intelligence. There's movements in technology. There's a first movement and there's a second movement. The first movement's fast, it's hypey, everyone talks about it. And then there's a huge crash where out of the 100 and some startups, 50 will be left, right? And then we get into the second mover, and I'm gonna reference the saying again of kicking the rock, because the first movement is going out and kicking a lot of rocks, right? We've stubbed our toes, we might have broken some, we've invested a lot of money, or maybe we haven't. We might have lost our data or created a security risk, and we all come back to the table and say, ooh, that wasn't good, let's try it again. We're about to hit the second movement. The first movement would not produce any AI FTE impact. The reason is because we were all trying a bunch of different stuff in a bunch of different ways. We didn't really know what we were doing, right? The second movement will be focused. It will have business focus on problems that need to be solved. We will likely see some impact. Now, the reality is, I don't think the robots are taking over, and I know I'm overgeneralizing there. I really think we're getting to a point where we understand the true meaning and application of AI in the ways that it makes sense. And it's actually going to be less disruptive than I think, than I think the news thinks. Because I think it's going to come in areas where we were all hoping someone else would do that job. And I think that we'll be able to focus more intently on the human value and the strategic advantages of our organizations today.
Excellent. What metrics should leaders use to measure the real impact of AI on workforce size and productivity? So what metrics should leaders use to measure the real impact of AI on workforce size?
Yeah, so real impact, separate from workforce size, I would say time, cost, and quality. But really what we can do is, when we're measuring deliverable-based outcomes, we can right-size that with FTE capacity required. And for those of you who have done capacity workloading before, we're seeing a shift where before it was kind of like, we think this is the job and we think this is 1 FTE, maybe 1.5, but we're going to stuff that in. We're getting to the point where, because we can break things down into the chunks of work and the processes, and we're doing that for artificial intelligence, we can actually mathematically equate that to an FTE.
Yeah, the question is kind of code for, we're getting downward pressure. Now, I don't want to say that we're being told to reduce workforce size, but there certainly is an expectation that this is going to magically reduce the workforce. And of course, it's budget season, and they go, well, because we're implementing AI, what does that mean for the FTE count for next year? You're not going to get any new ones, right?
Yeah, and I hate to beat this drum so much, but I think the reality is when we have those conversations, and I know exactly what you're talking about, that we have to be able to come back with the proof, the value. And I'm going to harp on the value analysis. Here's what I do. When someone says, well, and I have people that say this to me, well, can't you just automate that role? Why do you got to hire someone for that? And I work in an AI company. So, I mean, we're all going through this together. And I say, well, let me show you the measurement, right? I've mapped out the job description, the activities, and the deliverables that need to occur. I then take it and I look at the access that I have to tools or to solutions, and I say this much of it can be something that we can do today, but this much I still need a human, right? And we have to be able to show that math. That's what they're looking for. They're just looking for the math. If you can show your work behind that, the impact is going to exist. It's just not going to be as great as we think. And so I really encourage people to think of job descriptions differently. We've used job descriptions for so long as a way of kind of putting some general activities. The reality is focus on what are the outcomes. If you hire this person, what do you get, right? Stop using they're going to strategize. Are they? No, they're going to deliver a particular set of outcomes each year. And if you can do that, and then you can map that back to automation, great. You should definitely get the tool. If you can't, you should definitely hire the person.
And just one quick question on stakeholders. How should organizations communicate about AI's impact to stakeholders? How should they communicate AI's impact to stakeholders?
Regularly and honestly. So if you are running an artificial intelligence project, initiative, deployment, center of excellence, what have you, I think it's really important that we don't play it up. Don't be Business Insider. I think it needs to come from leadership, and I think it needs to come on a regular basis. I encourage when we're running initiatives, and we do this for ourselves and for the companies that we work with, it's really about what are we doing? What's the real impact of that? Don't hide things. People come to me and they're like, should I tell them that it might impact their job? Yes, you absolutely should. You should, because you would want someone to tell you. And so be honest about it. Be at least a monthly communication. Post information on your internal websites if you can. Provide as much educational opportunity as possible, and do so with the knowledge that if they know it's going to impact them, they will actually help you. They will not run away. They will if you hide it from them.
Excellent. Any questions from the audience?
So if a university was to offer a master's in AI, what would you expect them to know, and would you hire them?
Ooh. Would I hire the university or would I hire the person? Okay. Sure, so what I would expect them to know, that's a really good question. So at a base level, they're gonna need some coding experience in Python. Python's really key in artificial intelligence. We can't get away from it. There are some things in inference that require C and C#, but generally speaking, Python. I would expect them to have an understanding of some mathematical knowledge of a very advanced level. I would expect them to understand the types of artificial intelligence and how to leverage each of those for different problem sets. Machine learning is used differently than large language models, than predictive modeling, than forecasting. All these different outcomes require different sets of combinations. I would also expect them that they can understand a business problem. And I do know, having worked with some Big Ten universities, that they're starting to inject more of that. It's getting less computer science-y and more businessy, if you will. And I think that that set of individuals would, or that set of characteristics would be very beneficial. If that person came to my door and they were like, hey, I'd like to work there, I would definitely talk to them. People I won't talk to, people who are like, I've got a prompt engineering certificate. We have agents that do that now. So prompt engineering was one of the crashes, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
Good question. Yes?
You want to implement the measurement culture? You want to do it step by step. Where should you start?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So his question was, if you want to implement the measurement culture and you want to do it step by step, where do you begin? And I always begin with, first, set a time frame around work deliverables for the team that you're working with. So if you have a team of 5 people doing specification design, and we all agree to, you know what, we can work in sprints of 2 weeks or 1 month, okay? Agree to that, right? And then the first one, let it just go, okay? You're gonna have the first meeting, you're gonna say, we're gonna make a sprint commit today. And that sprint commit's gonna be, you're gonna tell me in the next 2 weeks or 1 month, what do you expect to achieve? We're gonna agree to that. We're gonna have a mid-sprint review where we say, how's it going? Are you gonna make the deadline or are you not gonna make the deadline? And it's okay at this point to say, you know what, I overestimated the amount of work I can do, I can't do that, right? Reset that expectation, and then set the delivery date and have that meeting where we're gonna deliver, we're gonna show our work. When we do that the first time, it's really important that if someone misses a deliverable, that you don't do anything punitive, okay? That we talk about why we missed that deliverable. Because if you punish them, they're totally never gonna do it again. The next time we do that, if someone misses a deliverable, we have a really specific process that we implement. We don't punish anyone. We do what's considered a root cause analysis, where we actually take someone outside of that team that it happened in, and we have them come interview all of the parties in that miss and say, what are the controls that we could have put in place that would have helped all of us be successful? They debrief on that, and then I'll be honest, and I have a colleague in the room, he'll keep me honest on this. It's probably one of the most empowering experiences when you come together and you make that change. So set a time frame, have 1 sprint of deliverables, commit to it, mid-sprint review, delivery, and then measure.
Hi, good morning. From a talent management perspective, where do you see the trend going between offshoring, nearshoring, and onshoring over the next couple of years?
Such a good question. Here's the reality. We are working with countries across the globe that have invested decades into this moment. And the offshore talent is incredible. The math skills, the programming skills, it's mind-blowing, the data scientists. I do see a trend of offshoring continuing to grow. I think where we have the opportunity as organizations to capture that is to truly embrace global talent rather than make it so difficult to bring in. There's 2 forms of global talent. There's true global talent where we standardize the talent management practices across the globe. There's also local global talent where we have a branch in Italy and we hire people out of Italy into that local. I'm talking about what we're gonna see is more of this urge to go to more global where they're just a part of the everyday team, but they come into us from another location. I think that we have the opportunity, if we get the education right, to inshore more of that. Unfortunately, that's a problem greater than I, and so that would take a lot of work. But I do think the reality is we're going to have to work as a globe.
Anything else? All right.
Oh, he's got one, sorry. It's okay.
Yeah, so I was recently at a couple different conferences. So I was at the UiPath conference, and their like message, I guess, was when you implement agentic AI to, go for like whatever your toughest process is and automate that, and then you get your ROI from that, and then everything after it is easier. And then on the flip side, I was at like the Experience conference, and they're more conservative, like start low, make sure you can trust it, build your way up. So like, with your experience in AI, what's your suggestion, I guess? Like,
Sure.
which path would you take?
Sure. I don't think either of them are wrong. I think I'm going to come at it from a different perspective. I think you have to have, in order to be successful in artificial intelligence, you have to have the foundations first. And that foundation is, can you locate and administer your data? And are you going to use people or are you going to use AI to do that? Because every agent requires that. You can't build a true agent without data and access to that data. And so until you get that right, you're not really doing it. And so my recommendation is start with the biggest problem, which is the data, and then build on top of that for your next biggest problem. I think what you're probably hearing from the other, where you pick something that you can get a quick win off of, is also true. But the quick win is, can you find the data? And if you can automate that and you can really bring that into administration, the rest of the problems are just cherries on top, because it's a lot easier to take what's existing and build just a little bit more analysis or a little bit more activation on top of it, rather than having to each problem dive in and do that activity every single time. So get the foundation right and then continue to build on top of that. Does that answer your question? Okay. Oh, yes, sir.
Good morning. You're working with companies all over the world. If you compare U.S. companies versus other companies, do you think U.S. companies get it, are getting it faster than the others? And who do you think's winning now, and who do you think is going to be winning in a couple of years from now?
Such a good question. I love these questions. So yes, we do work globally. If I were to compare U.S. versus other countries, it's kind of a toss-up. Where I would say that we see the biggest winners are by industry. So industry-wise, manufacturing's winning. It's kind of easy why. They've automated once, they're going to automate again. They don't have the cultural shift that's as great as when we look at retail or finance or healthcare or education. If we were to stack rank by industry who's winning, number one would be manufacturing. We're going to go right into finance and insurance after that. We're then going to go probably into any of our technology, retail, real estate. That's kind of one big winner. Honestly, the losers right now, and I'm sorry if you're part of these organizations, is healthcare and education.
Yeah. Healthcare.
Part of that's a finance issue. We haven't created good investment strategies. Part of that's a fragmentation issue. And part of that's a belief about the power of artificial intelligence and where it belongs. We have to work through those things in order to truly embrace it. And I apologize to my healthcare and education friends. That's where I came from. I empathize, but I'm about to say something difficult. We can't be the expert and also adopt artificial intelligence. It's really tough to do both of those things. And at some point, we have to figure out where we end and technology begins. And in both of those sectors, we struggle with that culture because we've purposely brought in a team of experts to do some of the most amazing things in the world. But we have to expect that that creates a cultural difficulty when we have to do something new. And so that's how I would separate out the winners and the losers, if that's helpful. Yes,
Take
Mike.
one last question.
I could be loud, so.
We know you can. This is my colleague, by the way, so he's heckling me from the audience.
All the answers were wrong. So I wanted to address a question that I think needs a better answer, because John asked pretty succinctly, how do we handle the skills gap? What happens when AI replaces what we used to call entry level? And how do we find people to overcome that?
Please do.
And I want to start by saying history shows this. By show of hands, who in here churns butter every morning so they can cook anything?
I do, obviously.
Yeah, well, you're weird. So nobody does that. And I think we have to come to terms with AI is going to replace things that you don't want them to know that. What you have to do, and there's going to always be a cycle of how does education get in front of this? How does hiring get in front of this? But you've just shifted where work actually starts. The entry-level job isn't the same entry-level job. The same as we had people hand-putting rivets into airplanes to go into World War II, we have machines that do that now. And you wouldn't ask somebody, how do you put a rivet in? It doesn't matter and they don't care. What you can ask them is, how do I assure the quality of the finished product is good? So when you look at work shift, you have to figure out, how do we take what AI has supplanted and change how we hire and look at it to begin with? And the casualty in the middle is, how do we handle the middle point where we have some people that are a little bit left out?
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that.
Well, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.